Before we begin recounting the events of the following war, if you're someone who enjoys history and the stories of soldiers and battles that changed the world, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the events we cover here. And share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever served in the military, or do you wish you could experience what it's like to serve? Your opinions mean a lot to us and help us build a true community of history enthusiasts. The snow fell in silence, thick, heavy, endless. It was December 1944, deep in the Ardennes forest, and the war was supposed to be nearing its end. But for the men of Easy Company, 106th Division, the Battle of the Bulge had just begun, and it would lead to one of the most chilling mysteries of World War II. They had been ordered to hold the line near the Belgian village of Schoenberg, a forgotten dot on the map swallowed by pine trees and fog. The unit had arrived only days earlier, inexperienced, undersupplied, and convinced that the German army was finished. Then the earth shook. At dawn on December 16th, the forest erupted in thunder. German artillery screamed overhead, ripping through the treetops. Radios went dead. The horizon glowed orange as the front collapsed in chaos. Within hours, entire regiments vanished under the German counterattack. Easy Company, led by Captain Harold Pierce, tried to regroup. He was 31, a quiet man from Chicago with the kind of steady eyes that calmed soldiers under fire. By dusk, he and his men were cut off, surrounded by fog, snow, and an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. "We'll dig in here," Pierce said, pointing toward a ridge near an abandoned farmhouse. The men obeyed, their faces pale, their hands trembling from cold and fear. For 3 nights they fought to hold that ridge. Ammunition ran low. Food froze in their packs. When the wounded moaned, Pierce told them softly to hold on, reinforcements were coming. But none came. By the 4th morning, radio contact was gone, and visibility had dropped to almost nothing. The men heard movement in the trees, crunching boots, faint German voices, then silence. Private Mason, the youngest in the group, swore he saw lights flickering deep in the woods. Lanterns, dozens of them. When Pierce sent a patrol to investigate, they didn't come back. By evening, a strange calm fell over the forest. No gunfire, no shells, only the sound of wind moving through the pines. The next day, an American recon team pushing through the area found what was left of the farmhouse, blackened and half buried in snow. The trench lines were empty. The rifles and helmets were still there. But the soldiers of Easy Company had vanished, every single one. No tracks, no blood, no sign of where they had gone. In the weeks that followed, the area was searched again and again. The snow melted, the mud thawed, nothing. Even the German reports made no mention of prisoners captured near Schoenberg that night. It was as if the company had simply walked into the forest and disappeared. The war ended in May 1945, but for the families of Easy Company, the silence never did. Mothers received identical telegrams, missing in action, presumed captured. But as months passed and prisoners were released from German camps, none of them mentioned the men from Schoenberg. It was as if that unit had been erased from existence. In late 1946, the U.S. Army sent Major Robert Holloway, a decorated intelligence officer, to reopen the case. Holloway was known for his obsession with battlefield mysteries, men who vanished, planes that fell without trace. He arrived in Belgium in winter, exactly 2 years after the company's disappearance. The forests looked the same, cold, silent, untouched, like the land itself refused to let go of its secrets. At a local tavern, he spoke to a Belgian farmer named Henry Duret, who remembered that December night vividly. Henry swore he saw lights in the woods, moving in perfect formation, but what chilled Holloway was what came next. "I heard voices," Henry said, his hands shaking. "Not German, not English, something else like whispers." Holloway dismissed it at first as fear or trauma. But the deeper he dug, the stranger the reports became. In the archives of the 106th Division, he found a fragment of a radio transmission logged on December 18, 1944, a message received at 02:13 a.m. The signal was weak and buried under static, but a single phrase was clear. "They're not ours, tell command." Then the transmission cut off. No other messages followed. When Holloway visited the site, he noticed something odd. The entire ridge where Easy Company had dug in was scorched, as if burned from above. Yet there had been no airstrikes in that sector during the battle. Pieces of metal half melted into the soil were found, not from artillery, not from aircraft, something else entirely. At the edge of the forest, hidden beneath moss and roots, his team uncovered the remains of a helmet U.S. issue, standard M1. But inside, the lining had fused with something that looked like glass. Back at his headquarters, Holloway studied the artifact under magnification. The glassy layer wasn't residue. It was sand fused at extreme temperature, far hotter than any known explosion could produce in those woods. The official report concluded, unknown cause. Unofficially, Holloway noted in his private journal, "There is evidence of energy discharge inconsistent with conventional weaponry. The local witnesses describe lights and silence. Suggests contact, but with what?" That line was blacked out in the archived copy years later. The Army closed the case in 1947. Files were sealed under Restricted Access Intelligence Division. To the world, Easy Company remained missing in action. But Holloway didn't stop. He kept searching through whispers, through locals, stories of strange lights still seen on winter nights over Schönberg. And then in 1951, he received a photograph. Sent anonymously, no return address. It showed a clearing in the same forest. And in the background, barely visible through the mist, were figures in World War II uniforms, standing in formation. Their faces were turned away. But the name tags, though blurred, seemed to read the same letters. Easy Co. By 1952, Major Holloway had become obsessed. He had left the Army, divorced his wife, and spent every last cent chasing what everyone else had dismissed as a wartime mystery. But to him, the forest of Schönberg still whispered. He returned to Belgium one last time, this time alone. Armed with his old field map, a Geiger counter, and the anonymous photograph, he trekked into the Ardennes under a freezing rain. By nightfall, he reached the same clearing where the picture had been taken. The air was still. No wind, no sound, not even birds. He set up camp and switched on his recorder. His last journal entry began. November 12, 1952. Location: Schönberg Forest, Grid 42 Delta. Radiation readings unstable. Hearing faint tones, not mechanical, almost harmonic. It's coming from beneath the ground. Then the recording went silent for 23 seconds. When it resumed, Holloway's voice trembled. "I can see them. I can see them, uniforms, faces. Oh God." That was the final entry ever made by Major Robert Holloway. He never returned. The recovery. In 1956, a NATO construction crew stumbled upon a hidden tunnel system while laying communication cables through the same region. Inside the tunnels were dozens of human remains, perfectly preserved, as if time itself had stopped. Each wore a U.S. uniform with the insignia of the 106th Infantry Division, Easy Company. But the most haunting discovery wasn't the bodies. It was the equipment. Their rifles were melted in half, not rusted, melted. The metal walls of the tunnel were warped and fused with a glassy residue, just like the fragments Holloway had found years before. and carved into the stone near the entrance was a single message, scratched by hand. "Still here, follow the light." The Army immediately classified the site. The remains were reburied under secrecy, officially recorded as casualties of the Battle of the Bulge. Major Holloway's disappearance was written off as a hiking accident. But one last detail leaked through a Belgian investigator who claimed to have seen the recovered artifacts before they were shipped to the U.S. He swore that inside one of the soldiers' pockets was a photograph, perfectly intact despite the years underground. It showed Easy Company standing together, alive, smiling, helmets off, in the very same forest. But behind them, faintly visible through the trees, was a bright white light. And reflected in their eyes were shapes. Shapes not human. Epilogue. In 1971, a classified report was quietly declassified by mistake for a few hours before being retracted. Its title, Incident Echo 106, The Disappearance of Easy Company. The final line of the report read, "Unknown phenomena encountered. Recommend continued surveillance of the Schönberg region. Possible non-terrestrial interference." To this day, hikers who enter that forest at night claim to hear voices, distant, echoing through the trees, calling out coordinates, names, and orders from a war long ended. Some say it's just the wind. Others say Easy Company is still out there, marching endlessly through time, answering a radio call no one else can hear.